Daddy, she's here. She's not dead. Veronica. Evil. Zeus, the parrot's shrill cry, echoed through the silent mansion, shattering Ricardo's illusory peace. His heart froze. Years of mourning for his little Sophia collapsed in a tsunami of panic and disbelief. His eyes focused on the bird, which flapped its wings frantically, pointing to the floor, to the invisible. A chill ran down his spine. Zeus's voice was eerily clear, laden with an urgency he had never heard before. He ran, blood pounding in his veins, towards the forgotten basement, and what he was about to discover would change his life forever, unmasking the woman who had sworn to love him. Ricardo descended the cold stone steps 2 at a time, his heart beating erratically in his chest. The air in the basement was heavy, damp, smelling of mold and abandonment, a stark contrast to the impeccable luxury of the rest of the mansion. Each step echoed in the oppressive silence, broken only by his own ragged breath and Zeus's intermittent squawks, as the parrot flew erratically above his head, a blue and green beacon in the darkness. Daddy! Here! Hidden! Veronica! Evil! The bird's words, repeated with desperate urgency, burrowed into Ricardo's mind, battling the disbelief that still tried to cling to his reason. Sophia. Alive. It was madness, a delusion brought on by grief. But the conviction in Zeus's pearly eyes was undeniable. He fumbled along the wall, searching for a switch, but the faint light from the upper floor barely reached that forgotten corner. Suddenly, an elegant, perfumed figure appeared at the top of the stairs. It was Veronica, with wide eyes and a forced smile on her lips. "Ricardo, my love, what's happening? Why all the rush? And Zeus, he's so agitated." Her voice was sweet, melodic, but Ricardo felt a shiver. The sweetness seemed like a mask, and for an instant he saw a flash of something cold and calculating in her gaze. He didn't answer, merely continued to sweep the basement with his eyes, searching for any sign, any clue. "Ricardo, you're scaring me." Veronica descended a few steps, the concern in her voice sounding a little theatrical. "It's that silly parrot again, isn't it? He's been repeating strange things. He must have heard some television show. Don't listen to him, my dear. He doesn't know what he's saying." She tried to approach, extending her hand to touch his arm, but Ricardo instinctively recoiled. The image of Sophia, small and smiling, danced in his mind, mixed with Zeus's cry. What if it was true? The mere possibility was both a torment and an overwhelming hope. Zeus landed on Ricardo's shoulder, rubbing his head against his ear. "Wall. False. She hid her." The parrot pecked Ricardo's neck, directing his gaze to a section of the wall that looked slightly different, newer, with a subtly distinct color. Ricardo approached, his heart pounding. The stone there felt smoother, almost as if it had been recently plastered. He ran his hand over it, feeling a slight irregularity. Veronica, noticing Ricardo's focus, hurried over. "Ricardo, please don't do that. It's just an old wall. There's nothing there. You're exhausted, my love. Grief still consumes you. Let's go upstairs. I've prepared some tea for you, and we can talk about what's bothering you." She tried to embrace him, but Ricardo gently pushed her away. "No, Veronica, not this time." His voice was hoarse, laden with a determination he didn't know he possessed. He ignored the panic that began to surface in his wife's eyes. With trembling hands, he began to tap the wall, searching for a hollow sound. The sound was solid, but Zeus, with a sharp squawk, flew to a small niche in the wall, a place where a built-in bookshelf once stood, now empty. The parrot began to frantically peck a specific spot, a small, almost imperceptible relief. Ricardo knelt, feeling the texture. It was a disguised lever. With a final look at Veronica, whose face was now pale and colorless, he pulled. A metallic creak echoed, and a section of the wall slowly moved inward, revealing a dark, narrow passage from which a faint smell of despair and life emanated. The faint smell of despair and life emanating from the secret passage hit Ricardo like a blow. He needed no more proof. The truth, cold and cruel, was there, materialized before his eyes. Veronica, previously pale, now seemed to have been drained of all color, her lips trembling in a silent confession. Her eyes, once filled with calculated sweetness, were now empty, revealing the icy soul Ricardo never imagined existed. Zeus, on Ricardo's shoulder, let out a soft chirp, almost a lament, but also a silent encouragement. Ricardo, without hesitation, turned on his phone's flashlight and entered the darkness. The passage was narrow and dusty, with damp stone walls that seemed to breathe stagnant air. Each step was an echo of his own disbelief and the pain that mingled with hope. Ricardo's heart pounded so hard he could feel it reverberate in his ears. The phone's light danced across the walls, revealing cobwebs and the oppressive silence that was broken only by the sound of his own footsteps and Zeus's ragged breathing, as the parrot faithfully followed him. He pressed on, driven by a force that came from a deep place within him, a paternal love that refused to accept defeat. At the end of the passage, a simple wooden door, almost invisible in the gloom, revealed itself. Ricardo extended a trembling hand and turned the doorknob. It wasn't locked. With a gentle push, the door opened into a small room. The air there was even heavier, but there was something more. A smell of life, of human presence. His eyes swept the space and then stopped. In the farthest corner, huddled on a thin mattress on the floor, was a tiny figure. His heart stopped. It was Sophia, thin, her hair tangled and her face pale, but unmistakably her. Her large eyes, once filled with a childlike sparkle, now carried a shadow of fear and trauma. But they were the same eyes as his little girl. Ricardo felt his legs weaken. He fell to his knees, his phone dropping from his hand and rolling across the floor, its light flickering. Hot, uncontrollable tears streamed down his face, washing away years of pain and guilt. "Sophia," he whispered, his voice choked, barely recognizing his own sound. The girl, hearing the voice, slowly raised her head, her eyes wide, like a frightened small animal. She didn't move, just watched him, her breathing shallow and rapid. Zeus, perched on Ricardo's shoulder, emitted a soft warble. Almost as if saying, "I told you." Ricardo slowly extended his hand, palm up, a gesture of peace and unconditional love. "My love, Daddy's here. I found you." Veronica's figure appeared at the entrance of the passage, her face a mask of despair and contained fury. Her eyes met Ricardo's, and for an instant he saw the totality of her betrayal. But at that moment, nothing else mattered. His eyes were fixed on Sophia. The girl, still hesitant, finally made a move. A small tremor ran through her body, and then a low sob escaped her lips. Ricardo felt his heart break and heal at the same time. He crawled towards her, ignoring the world around him, focused only on his daughter, on his little Sophia, who was alive. Ricardo crawled towards Sophia, his body trembling with the force of a rediscovered love. Ignoring Veronica at the entrance, he knelt completely, extending his arms. Sophia, a small tangle of fragility and fear, recoiled slightly, her wide eyes fixed on him, as if he were a vision. Her breath was a whisper, the malnutrition evident in her pale face and thin arms. "Sophia, my angel." "It's me, Daddy," he murmured, his voice choked with pain and joy. "I found you. You're safe now." He waited, his heart in tatters, fearing that the trauma had stolen her memory. But then a slight tremor ran through the girl's body. Her eyes, once so full of dread, softened a little, a spark of recognition igniting in the depths of the darkness. An almost inaudible sound escaped her lips, a faint "Daddy" that he barely heard, but which resonated in his soul like the most beautiful of melodies. Gently, as if she were made of glass, Ricardo pulled her into an embrace. Sophia's body was so light, so fragile, that he felt an overwhelming wave of guilt. How many years had she suffered there, alone? Tears streamed down again, wetting his daughter's tangled hair. He held her close, feeling the warmth of her small body, the miracle of her life. Zeus, on Ricardo's shoulder, descended and landed softly on the mattress, rubbing his head against Sophia's tiny hand, a gesture of loyalty that did not go unnoticed. Veronica, observing the scene from the entrance, finally moved. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her face contorted in defeat and hatred, her eyes fixed on Ricardo and Sophia, as if the sight were poison. Ricardo felt her gaze, but did not divert his attention from his daughter. Nothing would take that moment from him. He stood up, Sophia still nestled in his arms, and slowly turned to face the woman he once loved. "Veronica!" Ricardo's voice was a contained thunder, laden with pain and anger he never knew he possessed. "How could you? How could you do this to our daughter, to me?" Ricardo didn't need answers. The truth was there, alive in his arms. Sophia, sensing the change in atmosphere, pressed herself closer to her father, hiding her face in his neck. Veronica took a step forward, the mask of sweetness finally shattered. "Ricardo, please, I can explain. It was a mistake. I was desperate, afraid of losing you, of losing everything." Her voice was a lament, but without genuine regret, only the desperation of being caught. Ricardo looked at her with a coldness she had never seen. The woman he loved was a stranger, a monster. "There's no explanation for this, Veronica," Ricardo said, his voice now firm, though still choked. "You stole years of our daughter's life, of my life. You faked her death, made me live in a hell of grief, all for greed." He shook his head, disbelief battling with the harsh reality. "You are not the woman I thought you were. You are cruel." He turned, Sophia protected in his arms, and began to ascend the narrow passage. Each step was an act of liberation, a rebirth. Zeus flew ahead, leading the way. Veronica remained behind. In the darkness of the basement, her figure diminishing as Ricardo and Sophia emerged into the light. The world outside waited, a world to be rebuilt. But now, they had each other. The journey to heal the wounds would be long, but Ricardo knew with deep certainty that they would face it together. Justice would come, but the most important thing was that Sophia was back, and he would never leave her again. He felt Sophia's small sigh on his shoulder, a breath of life, a new beginning. Ricardo emerged from the secret passage, little Sophia nestled in his arms, her body light and fragile. The light from the upper floor hurt the girl's eyes, and she recoiled against her father's chest. Zeus flew ahead, landing on Ricardo's shoulder, watching. The mansion, once opulent and empty, was now the scene of the most painful revelations. The household staff, alerted, gathered, their faces a mixture of shock and confusion. Veronica, still in the basement, was quickly intercepted by the authorities Ricardo had called. The scene was brief, devoid of violence, but the image of his wife being led away, her face contorted in fury, was etched into his memory. In that instant, the outside world seemed distant. His eyes were fixed on Sophia, who trembled slightly in his arms, her small shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Ricardo carried her to the coziest room, Sophia's old bedroom, kept intact, a sanctuary of memories. The soft bed, the scattered toys, everything seemed strange to the girl, who clung to him like a shipwrecked survivor. Doctors were called, their voices soft and gestures careful. The diagnosis was clear: malnutrition, dehydration, and deep emotional trauma. Sophia didn't speak, only observed the world with wide, frightened eyes. Guilt weighed on Ricardo like a mountain. How could he have been so blind? Had he not noticed the signs, Veronica's lies? the pain of Sophia's loss, which he had carried for years, transformed into cold anger against the woman who had deceived him, and more importantly, into an unwavering determination to heal his daughter. He sat beside her on the bed, holding her small, cold hand. Zeus perched on the headboard, watching them with unusual seriousness, like a silent guardian. The days that followed were a blur of pain and hope. Ricardo dedicated every fiber of his being to Sophia. He read to her, sang lullabies she barely seemed to hear, and simply stayed by her side, offering constant and loving presence. Slowly, the girl began to accept his presence. Small gestures, like squeezing his hand or leaning her head on his shoulder, were monumental victories. The path to recovery would be long, but he was ready for every step. He talked to Sophia about the future, about the outings they would take, about the world that awaited her. He spoke about the justice that would be served, about how Veronica would pay for her actions, but always in a way that wouldn't frighten her. His focus was on rebuilding, on overcoming. The mansion, once luxurious and solitary, began to fill with a new purpose, with a love rescued from the depths. Zeus was a vital link. The parrot, with its peculiar intelligence, seemed to understand Sophia's fragility. He perched near her, emitted soft chirps, and sometimes whispered, "Daddy, loves Sophia," or "safe." Now, words that seemed to calm the girl in a way no one else could. Ricardo observed the interaction, his heart overflowing with gratitude for the bird that had unveiled the darkness. Gradually, the shadow in Sophia's eyes began to diminish. One day, as Ricardo read a fairy tale, she touched the page, a gesture that made his heart explode with joy. It was a sign, a glimpse of the girl she had been and the woman she would become. The family, once broken, began to rebuild, with the strength of love, resilience, and human connection. Ricardo knew the journey would be arduous, but he was there unwavering to guide his daughter into the light. He promised never to leave her alone again, to protect her from all harm, and that, together, they would rebuild a future of hope and happiness. Ricardo's promise to never leave Sophia alone again was the compass that guided his every day. The girl's recovery was a slow process, delicate as a flower blooming after a long frost. Each small step forward was celebrated with a reverent silence, a look of love that Ricardo could no longer contain. Sophia remained in her room, the sanctuary of her childhood, but now with the constant presence of her father and Zeus, the winged guardian. One day, as Ricardo read a storybook, his soft voice filling the room, Sophia, who until then seemed absorbed in her own world of shadows, extended her tiny hand. Her thin, pale fingers touched the illustrated page of a winged horse. It wasn't a smile, but a glimpse of curiosity in her eyes, a slight tremor on her lips. Ricardo felt a warmth spread through his chest, a balm for the open wound in his soul. He stopped reading, held her hand, and kissed it tenderly, his eyes moist with gratitude. Zeus, perched on the headboard, emitted a soft chirp, as if approving the scene. Ricardo, however, carried an invisible burden. Guilt gnawed at him, a persistent shadow reminding him of his blindness, of how he had allowed Veronica to weave her web of lies. He spent hours awake at night, reliving conversations, searching for signs he had ignored. The pain of betrayal was deep, but the most agonizing was having failed to protect his daughter. But he knew that guilt would not heal Sophia. Only his unwavering love and constant presence could do that. He promised himself that he would transform this pain into strength, into a shield for his little one. Zeus was more than a pet. He was a silent confidant, a feathered therapist. He would perch on the bed near Sophia and sometimes whisper simple phrases like, "Daddy, good," or "Sophia, strong." The girl, though still silent, seemed to find a strange comfort in the bird's voice, her large eyes following the parrot's movements. It was as if Zeus, with his peculiar wisdom, knew exactly what Sophia needed to hear. Ricardo's lawyers worked tirelessly to ensure Veronica faced all the consequences of her actions, stripping her of any rights or fortune. Ricardo, in turn, dedicated himself to creating an environment of peace and security for Sophia. Specialized child therapists visited the mansion, introducing games and activities that could, little by little, reopen the girl's channels of communication. He learned from them, observing every gesture, every word, determined to be the best father Sophia needed. The mansion, once a symbol of his loneliness and grief, now transformed into a home of healing. Ricardo filled it with soft colors, tranquil music, and a constant presence of love. He spent hours sitting on the floor of Sophia's room, building blocks, drawing with crayons, or simply holding her hand. He didn't force interaction, he merely offered it. Slowly, the girl began to show small signs of openness, a longer gaze, a firmer touch of his hand, a slight nod of her head. The journey was arduous, but Ricardo felt each day that they were on the right path. Overcoming was not a single event, but a series of small steps, of moments of connection. The family, once a broken concept, was being rebuilt brick by brick with the mortar of unconditional love and resilience. He knew that time was the great healer, and that together, with Zeus as their faithful companion, they would find full light. One afternoon, as Ricardo gently cradled her in his arms, singing an old lullaby his own mother had taught him, Sophia lifted her head from his shoulder. Her eyes, once so dull, shone with surprising intensity. She looked at Ricardo's face, then at the bedroom door, and then, in a weak but audible voice, broke months of silence. "Daddy, she gone?" The question, simple and direct, hit Ricardo like a lightning bolt. It was the first complete sentence, the first clear demonstration that she was processing what had happened, seeking the security he so desperately wanted to give her. He held her close, feeling the tremor in her small body. "Yes, my love," he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. "She's gone. You're safe now. Forever." Sophia nestled back in, but this time a deep, relaxed sigh escaped her lips. It wasn't a sob of pain, but a sound of relief, of a barrier finally beginning to yield. Ricardo felt a wave of hope so strong it almost knocked him down. This was the turning point, Sophia's first true step out of the darkness. The path would be long, but his daughter's voice was the sweetest melody he had ever heard, a sign that life indeed was returning. The sound of Sophia's voice, fragile but real, echoed in Ricardo's heart, filling his soul with a long-forgotten melody. He held her close once more, feeling her small body relax in his arms, a sign of trust that flooded him with indescribable joy. That sigh of relief was proof that light was, indeed, beginning to penetrate the shadows. The next morning, a new dawn seemed to have arrived at the mansion. Sunbeams danced through Sophia's bedroom windows with renewed delicacy. Ricardo woke before her, watching her sleep serenely, something that hadn't happened in a long time. Zeus, as always, perched on the headboard, his blue eyes fixed on the girl, like a sentinel. When Sophia opened her eyes, there was no longer the dread from before. Instead, she looked directly at Ricardo, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. It was a true miracle. Ricardo felt tears well up, but he held them back. He knew that every small gesture was a giant step. "Good morning, my love," he whispered, stroking her hair. Sophia didn't respond with words, but she extended her tiny hand, and Ricardo held it, feeling life pulse there. Zeus flew and landed on Sophia's arm, rubbing his beak against her cheek. The girl laughed, a soft, crystalline sound that made Ricardo's heart expand. It was the first time he had heard his daughter laugh in years. The therapists, informed of the breakthrough, were moved. They explained to Ricardo that Sophia's question was a sign that she was beginning to process the trauma, to seek answers, and to feel safe. Progress would be gradual, but the most difficult barrier had been broken. Ricardo dedicated himself even more, spending every free minute by Sophia's side. He took her for walks in the vast garden, where the colors of the flowers and the singing of the birds seemed to awaken new curiosity in her. Sophia observed everything attentively, and Ricardo narrated every detail, introducing the world to her. Guilt still visited him in moments of silence, a painful pang that reminded him of his failure. But now, this guilt was a motor, not a burden. He transformed it into an iron determination to be the father Sophia deserved, to rebuild everything that had been broken. He read to her, not just fairy tales, but books about animals, about space, anything that could awaken her mind. Sophia, in turn, began to imitate some of Zeus's sounds, and the parrot responded with enthusiasm, creating a peculiar dialogue that amused everyone. One day, while they were in the garden, Sophia pointed to a blue butterfly that landed on a rose. "Blue," she whispered, her voice still weak, but clear. Ricardo hugged her, his chest tight with emotion. "Yes, my love. Blue, like Zeus." The parrot, as if understanding, flew and landed on Sophia's head, and she laughed again. That small moment, the color, the word, the laughter, bore witness to human resilience, the healing that unconditional love provided. Ricardo knew the path would be long, but each day Sophia took a step forward, guided by her father's firm and loving hand and Zeus's loyal presence. The family, once broken, flourished again, stronger and more united than ever, under the sun of full hope. That small moment, the color, the word, the laughter, bore witness to human resilience, the healing that unconditional love provided. Ricardo knew the path would be long, but each day Sophia took a step forward, guided by her father's firm and loving hand and Zeus's loyal presence. The family, once broken, flourished again, stronger and more united than ever, under the sun of full hope. The next day, a new routine began to solidify in the mansion. Ricardo, with a smile he hadn't felt in a long time, watched Sophia as she ate her breakfast. The girl, once so withdrawn, now ate with a little more appetite, and her large eyes followed Zeus's movements as he perched on the chair beside her, occasionally pecking at a piece of fruit Ricardo offered him. The bird's constant presence seemed to be a balm for Sophia, a gentle bridge to the outside world. The child therapists noticed the remarkable change. They suggested Ricardo encourage Sophia to express herself through art. The next day, Sophia's room was transformed into a small art studio. Colorful paints, papers of all sizes, and soft brushes covered a low table. Ricardo sat beside her, mixing colors and drawing simple shapes without any pressure. Sophia, at first, only watched, but after a few minutes, she extended her tiny hand and picked up a brush. With hesitant movements, she touched the blue paint and made a small stroke on the paper. Ricardo felt his heart quicken. "How beautiful, my love," he whispered, and Sophia looked at him, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. Zeus, perched on the window frame, chirped in approval. Each day, Sophia explored a little more. Her strokes became firmer, and the colors more vibrant. She began to draw shapes Ricardo recognized, a flower, a bird, and, to his immense emotion, a simple drawing of a man holding hands with a girl and a blue bird flying above them. It was the representation of their new family, a silent testament to her healing. Ricardo hugged her tightly, tears streaming freely. "It's us, my love," he said, kissing the top of her head. "Daddy, Sophia, and Zeus." Guilt, though still present, was no longer paralyzing. Ricardo transformed it into a driving force, an unwavering commitment to make up for every lost moment, every inflicted pain. He knew that justice for Veronica was taking its course, but his own justice was the rebuilding of Sophia's life. He took her for short car rides, showing her the world beyond the mansion walls. Sophia observed the trees, the houses, the people, with growing curiosity, absorbing each new experience. One day, while they were in the garden, Sophia pointed to a yellow butterfly flying near a daisy. "Yellow," she said, her voice a little stronger than before, and then with a genuine smile added, "Pretty." Ricardo knelt, his eyes shining. "Yes, my love, very pretty." He felt that with each word, each smile, a piece of the dark past crumbled, revealing the vibrant girl who had always been there, just hidden. Zeus was a constant companion, his chirps and simple phrases punctuating the silence, always at the right moment. He seemed to have a sixth sense for Sophia's needs, offering comfort or distraction when she seemed most vulnerable. The connection between the girl and the parrot was a magical bond, proof that love and loyalty could emerge from the most unexpected forms. Ricardo began to reintroduce soft music into the environment, noticing that Sophia swayed her head slightly to the rhythm of some melodies. He sang to her, and one day, to his surprise, Sophia tried to imitate some notes. It was a fragile sound, but full of promise. The mansion, once an echo of his loneliness, now resonated with the melody of hope, healing, and unconditional love. Ricardo knew the journey was long, but each small step of Sophia's was a beacon, guiding them to a future of light. They were building a new story, a story of overcoming and human connection, where the family, rescued from the ashes, flourished with unwavering strength. Ricardo's love, Sophia's resilience, and Zeus's loyalty were the pillars of this reconstruction, solidifying the promise that they would never be alone again. Ricardo watched Sophia, his heart overflowing with a joy he never thought he would feel again. The promise that they would never be alone again was the melody that cradled their days. Each morning, the mansion awoke with a new purpose, with the soft melody of hope. Sophia, once a silent shadow, now filled the spaces with her presence, her small steps, and, occasionally, her voice. Sophia's drawings were no longer just strokes. They became simple narratives, yet laden with meaning. One day, she drew a radiant sun with vibrant yellow rays that seemed to leap from the paper, and pointed to it, saying with more clarity, "Sun, warm." Ricardo knelt beside her, his eyes moist. "Yes, my love. The sun is warm, and it brings us light, just like you." Zeus, who watched from Ricardo's shoulder, emitted a chirp of approval, as if understanding the depth of that moment. The interaction between Sophia and the parrot deepened each day. Zeus, with his peculiar intelligence, seemed like a co-therapist, a winged guardian who knew exactly how to communicate with the girl. He encouraged her to speak, repeating words she had said, and Sophia, in turn, tried to imitate the bird's sounds, creating a fun and unique dialogue. It was common to find them sitting together, Sophia stroking Zeus's blue feathers, while he whispered, "Sophia, beautiful," or "Daddy, loves." Ricardo had transformed the living room into a more welcoming space, with soft cushions and educational toys scattered around. He spent hours there, playing on the floor with Sophia, building block towers that she would knock down with contagious laughter. This sound, his daughter's laughter, was the purest symphony for Ricardo, a constant reminder that life was indeed returning. He took her to the kitchen, allowing her to help him prepare simple snacks like colorful sandwiches or fresh fruit salads, mixing ingredients with her tiny hands, a rich, sensory experience that helped her reconnect with the world. Guilt still paid nocturnal visits to Ricardo's heart, but he faced it with a new weapon: gratitude. Gratitude for having Sophia back, gratitude for Zeus, gratitude for the opportunity to rebuild. He knew that Veronica was facing the consequences of her actions, and justice, though slow, was being served. But his main focus was Sophia. He read to her about brave heroines, about magical worlds, and Sophia listened with wide eyes, absorbing every word. One day, while strolling through the garden, Sophia stopped before a bed of red roses. She bent down, smelled a flower, and for the first time reached out to pick it. Ricardo, with a lump in his throat, watched her. "Red," she said, holding the rose delicately. "Smells good." He hugged her, feeling the perfume of the rose and the warmth of his daughter's body. That simple gesture, the choice of a flower, the description of its scent, was a testament to Sophia's blossoming soul. The therapists were amazed by the progress. They explained that Sophia was demonstrating an incredible capacity for resilience, and that the love and security Ricardo provided were the fertile ground for her healing. They suggested Ricardo take her for a longer outing, perhaps to a quiet park, to gradually reintroduce her to the outside world. Ricardo hesitated for a moment, concern in his eyes. But seeing the curiosity in Sophia's eyes, the trust she placed in him, he knew it was the next step. He promised himself that he would protect her, that every step would be carefully planned. The mansion, once a refuge of pain, was now a springboard to life. The family, Ricardo, Sophia, and Zeus, was preparing for a new chapter, one where the light of love and hope would shine even brighter, guiding them to a future of full happiness. The promise of a new chapter hung in the air of the mansion. Like a gentle breeze announcing spring, Ricardo, his heart torn between hope and a hint of apprehension, began to plan the trip to the park. He knew it was a crucial step, but Sophia's fragility still haunted him. That morning, as they had breakfast, he watched his daughter with immense affection. Sophia, more active, played with Zeus, who gently pecked a piece of bread in her hand. The scene was a balm, but the idea of exposing her to the outside world, with its noises and unknown faces, gave him a knot in his stomach. "Sophia, my love," he began, his voice soft. "Daddy thought about taking you somewhere beautiful today, a place with many trees, flowers, and maybe even some little ducks in the water." He watched her reaction. Sophia stopped playing, looked up at him. A glimmer of curiosity mixed with uncertainty. She tilted her head, pondering. Zeus, sensing the tension, flew to Ricardo's shoulder and whispered, "Outing. Good." Ricardo smiled, grateful for the parrot's intervention. "Yes, Zeus is right, my love. It will be good. Daddy will always be close to you." He extended his hand, and Sophia, after a brief hesitation, placed her tiny hand in his. It was a vote of confidence that filled Ricardo with renewed courage. This was the moment. He prepared everything carefully: a blanket, water, toys, and a special place for Zeus in the picnic basket. As they left the mansion, the sun welcomed them. Sophia squeezed Ricardo's hand, her large eyes absorbing the garden. Each step was slow. Ricardo narrated, "Look, Sophia, a yellow butterfly. And those clouds up there look like cotton." In the car, Sophia sat in her car seat, looking out the window with an attention Ricardo hadn't seen in years. The world outside was a blur of colors, but she seemed to absorb every detail. At the park, the cool breeze caressed her hair. Ricardo picked her up, and they walked to a bench under a large tree. The park was quiet, with children playing in the distance, their soft laughter reaching them. Sophia observed the children, dogs, and elderly people, her eyes processing the new environment. Ricardo pointed to ducks on the lake. "Look, Sophia, little ducks. They swim in the water." With a slight smile, Sophia pointed, "Water. Duck." Her voice was a clear whisper. Ricardo felt a lump in his throat. Each word was a victory. He hugged her, kissing her head. "That's right, my love. Water and duck." Zeus, released, landed on the bench, chirping. That moment was a testament to the life pulsating in Sophia. They stayed there, just observing. Ricardo didn't force her, just let her absorb, feeling the peace in his heart. Guilt still visited him, but it was a reminder of his responsibility, not a burden. He was there, present, and that mattered. Sophia, with her tiny hand in his, seemed to find safe refuge, guided by her father's love and Zeus's loyalty. The healing journey continued, each step a miracle. The healing journey continued, each step a miracle. The trip to the park was a turning point, a glimpse of the world Sophia was ready to rediscover. In the days that followed, the girl blossomed in ways Ricardo had never dared to dream. Her babbling turned into clearer words. Her sentences, still short, carried a growing intention. She pointed to objects, named them, and her eyes shone with the joy of discovery. Zeus was her inseparable accomplice, a constant link to hope. The parrot repeated Sophia's new words, and the girl laughed, a sound that filled the mansion with a long, silenced melody. Ricardo spent every free moment by his daughter's side. They read illustrated books, and Sophia, with her tiny finger, pointed to the animals, imitating their sounds. She drew with more confidence, and her drawings, once simple shapes, now told small stories: a smiling sun, a house with a chimney, and always a blue bird flying nearby. Ricardo kept each of these drawings as invaluable treasures, testaments to his daughter's vibrant soul re-emerging. The therapists, amazed, suggested a new step. A small, carefully planned social gathering with people Sophia knew and loved before the trauma. Ricardo hesitated. The fear of exposing Sophia to any stress was still a ghost, but the determination to help her live fully was greater. He carefully chose a few people: Sophia's grandmother, Donna Clara, a kind-hearted woman who had always adored her, and Ricardo's aunt, Lucia, a warm and understanding figure. The day of the gathering arrived. Ricardo prepared the living room, transforming it into a refuge of comfort and joy, with fresh flowers and soft music. Sophia was dressed in a light blue dress, her hair delicately combed. She looked like a little princess, but Ricardo felt his heart pound, anxious about her reaction. Zeus, sensing the different atmosphere, landed on Ricardo's shoulder like a silent guardian. When Donna Clara and Lucia arrived, their eyes filled with tears upon seeing Sophia. They approached slowly, with gentle smiles and soft voices. "My beautiful granddaughter," whispered Donna Clara, extending her hand. Sophia, to Ricardo's surprise, did not flinch. She looked at her grandmother, then at Lucia, and a faint smile touched her lips. Ricardo felt a wave of relief. He explained Sophia's progress to them, the importance of not forcing interaction, only offering love and patience. The women sat on the sofa, conversing in low tones, allowing Sophia to feel at ease. Zeus flew and landed on Donna Clara's lap, who caressed him affectionately. Sophia, sitting on the floor, began to play with blocks. Suddenly, she looked up and gazed at Donna Clara, who was talking to Lucia. "Grandma," she said, her voice still fragile, but clear enough to be heard by everyone. Donna Clara stopped speaking, her eyes moist with emotion. She opened her arms, and Sophia, with newfound courage, crawled to her and nestled in her lap. Tears streamed down Donna Clara's face as she hugged her granddaughter. Lucia covered her mouth with her hand, moved. Ricardo felt a lump in his throat, an overwhelming mixture of joy and gratitude. This was the climax of their journey so far, living proof that Sophia was, indeed, returning. She not only spoke, but sought comfort, connection. Zeus, from Donna Clara's shoulder, chirped loudly as if celebrating. Sophia lifted her head from her grandmother's lap, looked at Ricardo, and with a wide, genuine smile said, "Daddy, happy." Those two words, laden with childlike purity and deep understanding, were the sweetest melody Ricardo had ever heard. The guilt that still haunted him in that instant completely dissolved, replaced by a full and unwavering happiness. He knelt before them, extending his arms, and Sophia, with an impulse, threw herself into his arms, hugging him with all the strength of her small body. The family, once broken, now united in an embrace of love and hope, stronger and more resilient than ever. The embrace with Donna Clara, Lucia, and Ricardo was the turning point. From that moment on, the mansion was no longer a refuge for healing, but a vibrant home full of laughter and conversations. Sophia, feeling safe and loved, began to blossom in a way that surpassed all expectations. In the days that followed, Donna Clara and Lucia's presence became more frequent, filling the spaces with warm, familiar energy. They told old stories, sang lullabies that Sophia seemed to recognize from a distant time, and the girl listened with wide eyes, absorbing every word. One day, as Donna Clara read a fairy tale book, Sophia pointed to the figure of a princess. "Princess. Blue dress," she said, her voice firmer and more melodic. Donna Clara smiled, stroking her granddaughter's hair. "Yes, my love, a beautiful princess." Sophia then turned to Ricardo, who watched the scene with a heart tight with emotion. "Daddy, tell me." Story. That request, Sophia's initiative to want to hear a story from her father, was an invaluable gift. Ricardo felt tears well up, but this time they were tears of pure joy. He picked her up and there, in the warmth of his arms, began to narrate a story of a magical kingdom, of a father and his daughter who, together, overcame all challenges. Sophia listened attentively, occasionally interrupting with a simple question or comment, demonstrating a curiosity and an ability to interact that had once seemed unattainable. Zeus, the loyal guardian, was always nearby. He perched on Sophia's shoulder, rubbing his beak against her cheek, or repeated the girl's last words, encouraging her to speak more. The connection between the two was a spectacle of love and loyalty, a silent testament to the power of friendship. Ricardo observed this dynamic and felt the guilt that haunted him dissipate each day. He realized that, although the past could not be erased, the present and future were being rewritten with the most vibrant colors of love and hope. He was no longer the man torn by pain, but a reborn father with a clear mission: to love, protect, and guide his daughter. Justice for Veronica, he knew, was taking its course. Occasional reports from his lawyers confirmed that she was facing the consequences of her actions, stripped of any influence or wealth. But this information no longer brought bitterness to Ricardo, only the certainty that order had been restored. His focus was entirely on Sophia, on every smile, every word, every small step forward. One day, while they were in the garden, Sophia ran towards a fountain, laughing as the water splashed on her hands. "Water? Cold, Daddy? Come!" she called him, extending her tiny hand. Ricardo ran to her, and together they played with the water, Sophia's laughter echoing through the garden. In that moment, Ricardo felt a deep and complete peace. The guilt was gone, replaced by immense gratitude. He looked at the blue sky, at the sun warming his skin, and knew that the darkness had been completely banished. The family, now complete, planned a small trip to a quiet place, a new beginning in a new setting, where Sophia could explore the world safely and joyfully. Donna Clara and Lucia promised to accompany them, reinforcing the bond of love that united them. Ricardo held Sophia's hand, feeling the warmth and life pulsating there. He knew that the path would be continuous, with new challenges and discoveries, but they would not be alone. Sophia's resilience, Ricardo's unconditional love, and Zeus's loyalty had forged an indestructible family, a beacon of hope that shone brighter than ever, promising a future of full happiness and human connection. Life, in its purest essence, had fully triumphed. Life, in its purest essence, had fully triumphed. The promise of the small trip, a new beginning in a new setting, filled the mansion with contagious anticipation. Ricardo, Sophia, Zeus. Donna Clara and Lucia departed for a tranquil country house, nestled between mountains and a crystal-clear lake, an invitation to peace and renewal. Sophia, in the back seat, watched the landscape change, her curious eyes absorbing details. She pointed to trees and animals, her questions bubbling up naturally. "Daddy, what's that?" "Look, a horse! Zeus, did you see?" Ricardo responded with a smile, his heart overflowing with happiness. Zeus, in his cage, chirped in response, actively participating. At the country house, Sophia explored the surroundings with renewed energy. She ran across the lawns, picked wildflowers, laughed with the wind. Ricardo watched her closely without the shadow of fear. The confidence in her eyes, the vivacity in her gestures, proved that the girl was finally free. He took her for boat rides on the lake, and Sophia, wearing a sun hat, pointed to fish or birds in the blue sky. Donna Clara and Lucia were pillars of love and support, their presences weaving a net of affection. They helped her build sandcastles, sang lullabies, shared laughter. Ricardo felt like a complete man. Guilt had been replaced by gratitude and purpose. He had rescued his daughter, and now he was building a future of light and unconditional love with her. Zeus, the unexpected hero, continued to be the magical link of the family. He perched on Sophia's shoulder as she drew or repeated her words, encouraging her to express herself. That parrot, once just a pet, had become the guardian of truth, the catalyst for redemption, an irreplaceable member. His loyalty was a constant reminder that hope can emerge from the most improbable places. News about Veronica arrived sporadically, confirming relentless justice. Stripped of fortune, freedom, and dignity, she faced the consequences of her cruel choices. Ricardo no longer felt anger, only sadness for the path she had chosen. His focus was entirely on Sophia's joy, on rebuilding her life, and on celebrating the family that had been reborn. The trip came to an end. Back at the mansion, now a home, Sophia continued to thrive, attending a small school where her curiosity and intelligence shone. Ricardo accompanied her every step of the way, a proud and present father. The mansion, once a stage of pain and deception, now resonated with the melody of life, laughter and love. The story of Ricardo and Sophia became a testament to human resilience, family love, and the importance of never giving up hope. Zeus, the loyal guardian, echoed the truth. Happiness blossomed in the pure connection between father and daughter. The future, bright and full of promises, a new chapter written with overcoming gratitude and a love that conquers all. Life, in its purest essence, had fully triumphed and would continue to do so forever. The forever that was announced was, in fact, a new dawn that stretched infinitely. The mansion, once a stage of painful memories, transformed into a sanctuary of laughter and learning. Sophia, with the vitality of a flower finally blooming under the sun, embraced life with insatiable curiosity. Her journey at the small school was a daily testament to her resilience. She made friends easily, her tiny hands intertwined with those of other children at recess, her eyes shining with the excitement of new discoveries. Ricardo watched her from afar, at school events, a proud smile and discreet tears in the corners of his eyes. He was a father present at every children's play, every parent-teacher meeting, every victory, big or small, of his daughter. His office in the mansion, once a refuge of incessant work, was now a space where Sophia frequently visited him, bringing her colorful drawings or sharing stories of the day. He had learned to balance his technological empire with the non-negotiable priority of being a father. Meetings were adjusted, trips minimized. With every "Daddy, help me," or "Daddy, look," Ricardo felt his heart expand. He helped her with homework, read to her before bed, and together they explored the world through books and conversations. The connection between them was a strong and beautiful fabric, embroidered with love, trust, and the joy of every shared moment. Zeus, the loyal macaw, continued to be the magical link of the family. He accompanied Sophia to school, perched in the special cage Ricardo had commissioned, and waited patiently for her. The children at school adored him, and Zeus, with his peculiar intelligence, seemed to understand his importance. At home, he was still Sophia's confidant, repeating her words, chirping in response to her games. It was common to see them sitting in the garden, Sophia reading to Zeus, who tilted his head, as if absorbing every syllable. Zeus's presence was a constant reminder of the truth he had revealed, but now it was a symbol of hope and redemption. Donna Clara and Lucia were constant presences, weaving a network of support and love that enveloped Sophia. They took her for walks in the park, for picnics, and taught her to bake cakes and cookies in the kitchen. The mansion, once silent, now echoed with the murmur of female voices, laughter, and the aroma of fresh bread. Ricardo observed this scene with a light heart. The family, in its broadest sense, had rebuilt itself, stronger and more united than ever. The shadow of Veronica had completely dissipated. Her name was rarely mentioned, and when it was only as a distant reminder of a painful past that had been overcome. Ricardo had forgiven, not for her, but for himself, to free his own heart from any bitterness. He understood that true justice was not punishment, but the reconstruction of Sophia's life and the celebration of the love that had been stolen. Sophia, now an older girl, with a sparkle in her eyes that reflected her healed soul, one day asked Ricardo, "Daddy, why is Zeus so special?" Ricardo hugged her, feeling the warmth of her body. "Because he showed us the way back to each other, my love. He taught us that love and truth always find a way to win." Sophia smiled, and Zeus, perched on Ricardo's shoulder, emitted a soft chirp, as if agreeing. Life, in its purest essence, continued to triumph, with each new day, each new smile, each hug. The mansion, the home, Ricardo's heart, pulsed with the melody of full and unwavering happiness, an eternal testament to the unconditional power of family love.